You know the exact, undeniable moment it happens. It's 3 p.m. on a random Tuesday. You are staring at a spreadsheet that suddenly makes absolutely no sense. Or you are standing in the middle of the kitchen folding a pile of laundry, and without warning, the air in the room feels impossibly suffocatingly heavy. The back of your throat develops a distinct, sharp scratch, a friction that feels a bit like swallowing fiberglass. Your joints, which you haven't thought about all day, begin to ache with a dull, rhythmic thud that perfectly matches your pulse. The ambient temperature of your living room hasn't changed a single degree, but you are suddenly freezing. The kind of deep bone cold that makes your teeth involuntarily chatter. The flu has arrived, or the newest variant of whatever respiratory virus is making the rounds at your kid's daycare, or perhaps just the sheer crushing weight of millennial burnout finally manifesting as a physical collapse. In a single instant, your relationship with your house completely and violently changes. The open concept living area you loved yesterday, that one that looked so fantastic on Instagram, suddenly feels horribly, dangerously exposed. The beautiful, uncurtained, floor to ceiling windows are no longer providing passive solar gain. They are letting in a harsh, piercing glare that makes your optic nerve throb. The hard surface luxury vinyl plank floors echo every single footstep from the unit upstairs, sending tiny, exhausting shocks of cortisol through your system. When you are sick, your home ceases to be a passive aesthetic backdrop. It becomes an active, aggressive participant in your immune response. It is either functioning as your nurse or it is acting as your antagonist. Last week, we talked about the performance of home. We looked at the immense, exhausting, entirely unacknowledged metabolic energy it takes to curate a space for the gaze of others. We talked about hiding our actual lives, the clutter, the unwashed dishes, the visible signs of human struggle behind careful aesthetic choices, and how that relentless performance spikes our baseline stress levels. We discussed how exhausting it is to live in a museum of your own making. But what happens when the curtain drops? What happens when the audience leaves, the performer is running a high fever, and you are actively leaking fluids onto your mid century modern sofa? The big question this week is, how does your house take care of you? I'm Erns. Welcome back to Froh Tell. Let's strip away the drywall, the expensive furniture, the trending paint colors, and carefully curated throw pillows for a minute. Let's talk about biology. Let's talk about what you actually are. We forget constantly, and to our own extreme detriment, that we are animals trying to live inside rigid, highly artificial modern boxes. Your animal self does not give a single damn about the resale value of your property. It does not care if your kitchen island is made of calicotta, marble, or formica. Your animal self cares about exactly two things: survival and threat detection. When a pathogenic infection enters your system, your body initiates an incredibly expensive, violent metabolic process. The immune response is not a passive event, it is a full scale biological war. It requires a massive amount of caloric energy to elevate your core temperature to cook off the virus, to rapidly produce white blood cells, and to flood your system with inflammatory markers. To do this, your biology essentially forces you to power down all non essential systems. You become lethargic. You lose your appetite for complex digestion. You lose your desire to socialize. You retreat. Evolutionarily speaking, when an animal is sick, it is highly vulnerable to predation. A lion with a fever cannot run. A human with influenza cannot fight. So the biological imperative, hardwired into your DNA from our time on the ancestral Savannah, is to find a dark, quiet, and closed space to hide until the danger has passed. We call this the need for refuge. The problem is, we try to execute this ancient biological recovery program inside modern environments that are actively fighting our biology at every turn. Healing is entirely a function of the parasympathetic nervous system. That is the rest and digest mode. It is the physiological state where your heart rate drops, your breathing deepens into your diaphragm, your blood pressure stabilizes, and your body actually repairs cellular damage. The opposite of this is a sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight mode. This system is designed to keep you alive in the face of an immediate physical threat. When it activates, it pumps your blood full of cortisol and adrenaline. It pulls blood away from your internal organs and pushes it to your extremities so you can run. Here is the hard, unavoidable silence. You cannot heal efficiently in a sympathetic state. It is biologically impossible. Cortisol is an immunosuppressant. Let me repeat that. The stress hormone your body produces when it feels threatened actively suppresses your immune system. If your home environment is keeping your nervous system on high alert because loud, too open, or too uncomfortable, your body is forced to divert precious metabolic energy away from fighting the virus and towards scanning the living room for a non-existent saber-toothed tiger. So, how exactly does modern residential architecture trigger the stress response? How are our houses making us sicker? Let's look at the data, breaking it down into three specific categories: air, light, and sound. First, we have to talk about the mechanical lungs of your house, the air. As a commercial interior designer, I spend a lot of time looking at human well-being. When we design hospitals or high-end corporate headquarters, indoor air quality is scrutinized down to the microscopic particle. We look at volatile organic compounds, particulate matter, and air exchange rates. But in our homes, we completely ignore it. When we are dealing with a respiratory illness, the single most critical yet almost universally overlooked metric in a residential environment is relative humidity. Viruses absolutely thrive in dry air. During the winter, when we turn on our forced air heating systems, the relative humidity in the average North American home plummets to 20% or lower. This is basically the humidity of the Mojave Desert. When the relative humidity in your house drops below the critical threshold of 40%, two catastrophic biological and physical things happen. First, let's look at the physics of transmission. When you cough, sneeze, or even just breathe, you expel respiratory droplets. In a room with healthy humidity, which is around 45 to 50%, those droplets remain heavy with moisture. Gravity acts on them quickly, pulling them down to the floor where they are relatively harmless. But in a dry, 20% humidity room, the moisture in those expelled droplets instantly evaporates into the arid air. The droplets shrink. They become microscopic, lightweight aerosols. Without the weight of water, gravity cannot pull them down. They can literally hang suspended in the ambient air currents of your living room for hours, dramatically increasing the transmission rate to your partner, your kids, or anyone else breathing that air. Second, and far more importantly for your own suffering body, your mucous membranes dry out. The lining of your throat, your nasal passages, and your lungs is your body's first biological line of defense. It is designed to be sticky. It acts like flypaper, meant to trap pathogens and dust before they can penetrate deeper into your respiratory system. In a dry, overheated bedroom, that mucosal lining dries into a rigid, fragile crust. It cracks. It forms microfissures. It essentially opens the front door, bypasses the security system, and rolls out a red carpet directly into your bloodstream for the virus. Your home's HVAC system, if not properly humidified, is literally stripping away your biological armor while you sleep. You wake up with a throat that feels like sandpaper, not just because you are sick, but because your house dehydrated you for 8 hours. Then there's the light. I recently reviewed a fascinating crossover study published in the journal NDPI regarding access to daylight, circadian alignment, and mental health. The findings are vital when we talk about convalescence. And apologies beforehand, things really get sciencey for a bit. Sleep is the primary non-negotiable mechanism for recovery. You do not heal when you are awake watching Netflix. You heal when you are unconscious. During deep, slow-wave sleep, a miraculous biological process occurs. Your brain cells literally shrink in size slightly, opening up the interstitial spaces between them. This allows cerebrospinal fluid to rush in and wash away the toxic proteins and metabolic waste products that have built up during the day. It is a biological pressure wash for your nervous system. But your sleep architecture and the timing, depth, and quality of that pressure wash is entirely dictated by your circadian rhythm. And your circadian rhythm is controlled almost exclusively by light entering the eye and hitting a tiny cluster of cells in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. When you are sick, what do you usually do? You draw the blinds, you lie in a dim, heavily shaded room all day long, groaning. And then at 9 p.m., when you inevitably have to get up to use the bathroom, you stumble in and flip on the bright overhead LED vanity light. In doing so, you have just shattered your biological clock into 1,000 pieces. Your eyes contain specific non-visual photoreceptors that do not help you see shapes or text. They exist solely to measure something called melanopic lux. They are constantly searching your environment for bright, blue-rich light spectrum of the morning sun. When they detect it, they tell your brain to stop producing melatonin and start producing serotonin and cortisol to wake you up. If you spend 3 consecutive days in a dark bedroom because you have the flu, your brain loses its anchor to the rotation of the earth. It is drifting in temporal space, and when you finally turn on that harsh 4,000 Kelvin overhead bathroom light in the middle of the night, those photoreceptors absorb the blue light. They scream at your pineal gland that the sun has just risen, that it is high noon on the Savannah, and that is time to hunt. Your melatonin production instantly crashes. The hormone you desperately need to initiate that deep, restorative, brainwashing sleep is suppressed. You crawl back into bed, but you suffer from fragmented, terrible surface level sleep. Because your house gave your brain the wrong optical data, your recovery timeline stretches from 3 manageable days to a miserable week and a half. Finally, we have to examine the acoustic profile of illness. A sick body is, by definition, a hypervigilant body. Because your animal self knows it is injured, because it knows it cannot physically run away from a predator, its sensory perception actually heightens to compensate. It acts as an early warning radar system, listening intently for approaching threats. This is exactly why, when you have a migraine or a severe fever, the sound of a spoon dropping on the kitchen counter feels like a physical blow to the skull. It is why the hum of the refrigerator suddenly sounds like a jet engine. In acoustics, we differentiate between ambient noise, like a fan, and impact acoustics, sudden, sharp noises. Sudden, sharp noises trigger an involuntary biological reflex called the auditory startle response. Before your conscious brain can even register that a sound was just your partner dropping a shoe, your amygdala has already processed it as a threat. Your heart rate violently spikes. Cortisol floods your system. Your muscles tense. You are instantly, ruthlessly yanked out of the parasympathetic healing state and thrown back into flight or fight. Modern residential architecture is an absolute acoustic nightmare for a sick person. Over the last 20 years, we have systematically removed all the soft, sound absorbent materials from our homes. We ripped out the wall to wall carpeting and replaced it with luxury vinyl plank or hardwood. We removed heavy drapes and installed sleek, hard roller shades. We love massive kitchen islands made of quartz or granite. We love huge, uninterrupted panes of glass. We have built ourselves beautiful, highly cleanable echo chambers. The sound transmission class, which is STC, and noise reduction coefficient, NRC, of the modern living room are abysmal. When you are sick on the sofa, every single footstep, every clinking glass, every door closing bounces off those hard surfaces and goes directly into your highly sensitized auditory cortex, ensuring your nervous system never, ever actually powers down. Design is biology. It is not just about aesthetics. It is not about whether your house looks like a Pinterest board. It is about whether your house supports the fragile biological organism living inside it. A messy house is not a moral failing, and leaving a pile of tissues on the nightstand because you are too exhausted to walk into the trash can is not a character flaw. And taking twice as long to recover from a standard respiratory virus because your apartment is dark, dry, and loud is not a personal weakness. It is a design failure. We need to rethink the spaces we occupy when we are at our most vulnerable. We need spaces that offer refuge, low ceilings that make us feel contained, soft, acoustics that absorb the harshness of daily light, and warm, dim, amber lighting that signals to the ancient parts of our brain that the perimeter is secure and the sun has set. We need environments that drop our heart rate simply by existing around us. We have to build homes that actually know how to nurse us back to health. The idea that a house is supposed to comfort you is actually a pretty new, radical concept to me. If we haven't met before, you should know that I was born into a fundamentalist Mennonite colony in the dusty, arid expanse of northern Mexico. In that world, architecture was not designed to comfort, it was designed to enclose. It was entirely violently utilitarian. If you watched my previous videos and know a bit about my family history, you'll understand how when your entire lineage is fundamentally nomadic, when survival means keeping a bag packed by the door for half a millennium, even when you finally stop moving, your architecture reflects a deeply temporary, austere mindset. You do not invest in velvet armchairs or soft acoustic panels. You build rigid boxes to keep the wind out. Growing up, we were taught a very specific, unforgiving theology regarding the physical body. The flesh was something to be disciplined. It was something to be commanded. It was certainly not something to be pampered. In that environment, sickness was not treated as a biological reality requiring compassion. Sickness was a moral failure. It was an inconvenience to productivity. It was a theft of the day's labor. I was a highly anxious, observant boy, so my baseline physiological state was hypervigilance. I was constantly scanning my environment, monitoring my posture, the pitch of my voice, and the reactions of the adults around me to ensure I wasn't discovered. I was living in a perpetual sympathetic nervous system response. It took me moving across the continent to the damp, green safety of Victoria, British Columbia, to learn that resting is not a weakness. I had to learn that the body keeps the score and that denying your biology does not make you righteous. It just makes you sick for longer. Building a home that actually lets you rest, designing a space that treats your exhausted, feverish body with kindness, is a radical act of self-compassion. So, let's walk through your house. We are going to take the hard science of the well building standard and evolutionary psychology, and we are going to apply it to 10 specific rooms. I am going to give you 10 Froh fixes to transform your home from a rigid, demanding box into a biological recovery chamber. Number 1, the entryway, the decontamination zone. Think about the exact moment you stumble through your front door after dragging yourself to the pharmacy for cough syrup. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for complex decision making, balancing on one foot to untie a boot and organizing items, is utterly fatigued. You are running on zero executive function. The pro fix, cognitive offloading. You need to remove all physical and mental friction from the threshold. You need a dedicated, highly visible, heavy-duty hook for your coat that requires zero aiming to hit. You need a specific open tray for your keys and wallet. Do not put things on hangers. Do not open closet doors. Do not force your brain to categorize items when you are sick. Reducing the cognitive friction lowers your stress hormone load the absolute second you cross the threshold, allowing your body to initiate the parasympathetic response. Secondly, the kitchen, the hydration station. You wake up at 2 a.m., your throat is coated in glass. You drag yourself out of bed and shuffle into the kitchen to get a glass of water. If you flip on the main overhead recessed lights, you are essentially staring directly into the midday sun. The lumens hit your retina, spike your cortisol, and instantly destroy whatever fragile melatonin your pineal gland had managed to synthesize. The Froh fix is contrast lighting. You must break the reliance on overhead lighting. Install low lumen, extremely warm toned under cabinet lighting. You want just enough illumination brushing across the countertop to allow you to pour a glass of water without breaking a glass or waking up your suprachiasmatic nucleus. You stay in the dim, shadowy, parasympathetic healing state while navigating the hardest, sharpest room in the house. Number 3, the living room, the secondary sickbed. Evolutionary biologists study a concept called Thigmotaxis. It is the hardwired instinct of an animal to hug the perimeter of a space, to press it back against a wall or a barrier, to avoid predators. When you are sick on the sofa, open concept furniture floating in the exact center of a large room makes your ancient nervous system feel exposed from a full 360 degrees. The Froh fix, simulated refuge. If you cannot physically move your heavy sectional against a solid wall, you must create artificial boundaries. Pull an incredibly heavy, highly textured weighted blanket over your entire body. The proprioceptive input, which is the physical downward gravitational pressure resting on your joints and muscles, stimulates the vagus nerve. It physically mimics the feeling of being held against a secure boundary. It signals to your brain that the perimeter is safe, instantly dropping your resting heart rate. Number 4, the primary bedroom, or the engine room of convalescence. This is the most critical room in the house. This is where the biological pressure wash happens. The Froh fix is the cave protocol. You need high humidity and absolute uncompromising darkness. Push your relative humidity above 40% using a bedside humidifier to physically protect the mucous membranes in your throat and lungs. Then, install actual heavy blackout curtains. I'm not talking about the cheap paper cellular shades that leak a glowing halo of street lamp light around the edges. You want to recreate the absolute sensory deprivation of a subterranean cave. This pitch black environment allows your brain to seamlessly execute the cerebrospinal fluid wash, clearing out inflammatory neurotoxins without a single light-induced interruption. Number 5, the bathroom, the acoustic nightmare. Bathrooms are the most hostile rooms we build. They are literal echo chambers constructed entirely of porcelain, glass, mirror, and tile. When you have a migraine or a severe fever, the simple act of setting a plastic toothbrush down on a quartz vanity sounds like a gunshot. It triggers an immediate, violent auditory startle response. The Froh fix, temporary acoustic dampening. When you are sick, you have to soften the acoustic profile of the room so your hypervigilant nervous system can finally stand down while you try to breathe in the shower steam. Put down an extra, heavy, high-pile cotton bath mat. Swap the rigid, crinkly plastic shower liner for a dense, woven fabric one. Drape a thick towel over the glass shower door to disrupt the sound waves bouncing across the room. Number 6, the home office, the guilt room. We live in an era of constant availability. If your home office setup, your dual monitors, your docking station, your piles of paper, is visible from the hallway or the living room sofa, simply making eye contact with your laptop while you have a fever induces a massive wave of anticipatory stress. The Froh fix, the visual mute button. You have to sever the visual connection to your labor. Throw a heavy, beautiful textile, or a blanket completely over your monitors. Shut the laptop, unplug it, and physically place it inside a drawer. If your optic nerve does not have to see the blinking notification light or the unread emails, your amygdala does not have to process the threat of them. Out of sight directly translates out of the sympathetic nervous system. Number 7, the kids or guest room, the quarantine zone. When you are trying to isolate a sick family member, or when you yourself are banished to the guest room to spare your partner, you face a thermodynamic problem. You need to manage the viral load in the air, but if you crack a window in the middle of winter, you drop the ambient temperature and freeze the patient. The pro fix, localized HEPA filtration. A cold draft forces an already exhausted body to burn its precious metabolic energy just to maintain core temperature, pulling resources away from fighting the virus. So instead of opening a window, use a quiet, localized HEPA air purifier. This allows you to physically scrub the aerosolized pathogens from the breathing zone while completely preserving the thermal comfort and the heat envelope of the room. Number 8, the hallways, or the transition corridors. Hallways are dangerous because they are strictly utilitarian paths connecting the bedroom to the bathroom. They are usually lit by harsh overhead flush mount fixtures. The Profix low level ambient wayfinding. Use plug in nightlights, but they must be located strictly near the baseboards and they must emit an amber or red spectrum light. By keeping the light source below your physical eye level, and by eliminating the blue light spectrum entirely, you avoid triggering melanopsin receptors in your retina. You can safely navigate the corridor, use the bathroom, and return to bed without ever telling your brain that the sun has come up. Number 9, the dining room, the unused expanse. Dining chairs are ergonomically designed for exactly one thing: 90 minutes of active, engaged posture while eating a meal and conversing. The geometry of a dining chair, the rigid 90-degree angle of the seat and back, is inherently hostile to a sick, exhausted body with aching joints. The Froh fix is repurposing rigid geometry. If you absolutely must sit upright at a table to eat a bowl of soup, you have to alter the ergonomics. Bring a supportive, high density foam cushion or a thick rolled blanket for your lumbar spine. Postural stress forces your core muscles to fire constantly just to keep you upright, rapidly draining the caloric energy your immune system desperately needs. Support the physical structure so the biological structure can rest. Lastly, number 10, the garage or utility room, the frictionless drop zone. When you are sick, the mechanics of daily life pile up. The laundry baskets overflow with sweaty sheets and used towels. The Froh fix, eliminating decision fatigue. You must create a frictionless drop zone. Have a single, massively organized open basket in the laundry room dedicated purely to sick clothes. Do not require your exhausted, feverish brain to execute fine motor skills, color categorization, or fabric sorting. A single target, zero decisions to make. You drop the heavy load, you turn around, and you go back to bed. You conserve every single ounce of your metabolic energy for cellular repair. The acute phase of the illness eventually passes. The fever breaks. The pile of tissues finally stops regenerating on your nightstand. You take a shower, you put on hard pants, which feels like a betrayal to your soft, recovering body. and you look in the mirror, you are operating at perhaps a generous 70% capacity. Your joints still carry a residual ache, brain feels like it's wrapped in damp wool, and your energy reserves are practically non existent. You are experiencing post spiral fatigue, but you tell yourself you are not technically sick anymore. You do not have a fever, the rapid test is negative, so you pack your bag, grab your keys from the entryway tray, and you commute. The architecture of convalescence does not end when you leave your house. In fact, this is where the biological conflict becomes the most severe. When you return to the workplace in a state of deep fatigue, you are carrying a highly fragile nervous system into a machine designed exclusively for output. So let's walk through the modern commercial landscape. I'm going to show you exactly how 10 specific zones across various industries impact your recovering body and what the well building standard, alongside fundamental biology, tells us we should be demanding from our employers. Number 1, the corporate lobby, the biological airlock. When you enter a standard commercial office building, you pass through a transition zone. Often, this space is designed entirely around security and brand intimidation. Picture massive monolithic marble desks, rigid security turnstiles, harsh reflective surfaces, and bright clinical lighting. When you are operating at 70% capacity, a highly securitized lobby spikes your heart rate before you even reach the elevator bank. Your body registers the cold, hard materials as a hostile environment. The Froh fix is the lobby must function as an airlock for your nervous system. We need profound, heavy biophilia here. I'm not talking about a single sad, potted pothos dying in the corner. I mean the large-scale integration of natural materials, water features, and organic, varied textures. Seeing living green elements and natural wood grain instantly triggers a parasympathetic response. It drops your blood pressure and lowers cortisol as you transition from the chaos of your morning commute to the demands of your labor. Number 2, the open office, or the panopticon. This is, without question, the worst environment ever designed for an exhausted human immune system. Sitting at a long, benching workstation in the middle of a massive floor plate violates every evolutionary rule we possess. We have prospect, and you can see all the way across the room, but you have absolutely zero refuge. You are visually and physically exposed from behind. When you are recovering from a virus, your threat detection system is on high alert. Sitting with your back to a bustling corridor faces your brain to constantly monitor for danger, draining the exact metabolic energy you desperately need to heal your cells. The Froh fix: if you must sit in an open plan while recovering, you need localized architectural control. Employers must provide high-backed acoustic seating that wraps around the user, mimicking that essential feeling of Thigmotaxis, the comfort of having your back protected. We also need sophisticated pink noise masking systems pumped softly through the ceiling grid. This raises the ambient sound floor just enough so that every single cough, dropping pen, or heavy footstep doesn't trigger your auditory startle response. Number 3, the boardroom, or the viral mixing bowl. Boardrooms are designed for collaboration and intergenerational knowledge transfer. As I researched during my master's practicum, these rooms are where the baby boomer executives sit across the table from the Gen Z associates to share institutional knowledge. Unfortunately, they are also where intergenerational viral transfer happens. You pack 12 people into a room designed for 8, shut the heavy acoustic door for privacy, and talk loudly for an hour. The Froh fix, high velocity air exchange. According to the WELL version 2 standard and reset air protocols, meeting rooms require drastically higher air changes per hour than the rest of the floor plate. We cannot rely completely on standard base building HVAC for this. We need dedicated in room HEPA filtration systems and constant real time air quality monitors. When you seal yourself in a room, exhaled carbon dioxide pools rapidly. Elevated CO2 causes immediate headaches, lethargy, and cognitive decline. Symptoms that perfectly mimic and exacerbate your post viral fatigue. A screen on the wall should visually alert the occupants when CO2 reaches 800 parts per million, prompting them to open the door and flush the room. Number 4, the break room, the sympathetic cafe. Digestion is a complex biological process that requires your body to be in a state of deep rest. You literally cannot extract nutrients from your food if cortisol is flooding your bloodstream. Yet, we design corporate break rooms with hard, backless stools, unyielding quartz counters, and the exact same 4000 Kelvin fluorescent lighting we use over the coffee machines. The Froh fix, ergonomic softness, and light zoning. A break room must be a distinct physiological departure from the desk. We need soft, upholstered boot seating that supports the lumbar spine so your core muscles can completely disengage. We need pendant lights dialed down to a warm 2700 Kelvin, hanging low over the tables to signal to the brain that the physical threat of labor is temporarily paused. You cannot heal if you are eating your lunch in a state of fight or flight. Number 5, the wellness room, or the bare minimum. Many modern offices now include a wellness room or a mother's room, simply to check a box for a building certification. Too often, it is an interior, windowless closet located directly next to the loud printing station or the washrooms, furnished with a single wipeable vinyl chair and a glaring overhead light. The Froh fix, absolute uncompromising dignity. A true wellness space designed for biological recovery requires 3 non negotiable elements. First, absolute acoustic isolation. The walls must be insulated all the way up to the concrete ceiling deck. And secondly, total visual privacy too. No frosted glass doors where the shadows of your coworkers pace back and forth while you are trying to regulate your breathing. And finally, it must feature a flat, upholstered daybed. A cot in a closet does not lower cortisol. A meticulously designed room that honors the body's need for profound horizontal rest does. Number 6, the retail cash wrap, the constant performer. Let's move out of the corporate office. If you work in retail, you know the absolute bodily punishment of standing at a cash wrap or point of sale counter for an 8-hour shift while nursing a post viral ache. The retail floor is a stage, and when you're expected to perform the illusion of perfect health, you are standing on polished concrete or thin luxury vinyl tile, which causes venous pooling in your legs and sends shockwaves up your lumbar spine. The Froh fix is integrated architectural relief. The anti-fatigue mat should not be an afterthought tripped over by staff. Compressible, highly resilient flooring should be specified and inset directly behind the cash wrap. Furthermore, the transaction counter must have a dropped ADA compliant tier that allows the employee to actually sit on a drafting stool without looking like they are hiding. We also need visual baffles, small architectural screens that block the employee's direct line of sight to the endless, stressful queue of waiting customers while they are processing a transaction. Number 7, the nursing station, or the alarm fatigue zone. Healthcare environments are ironically some of the most biologically punishing workplaces in existence. If you are a nurse returning to a 12-hour shift after a bout of the flu, your nervous system is walking into an absolute wood chipper. The central charting station is characterized by constant, piercing auditory alarms, glaring overhead lights, and constant spatial interruption. The Froh fix, acoustic zonation, and circadian support. We have to design nursing stations with highly absorptive ceiling baffles and rubberized flooring to cut the reverberation of rolling carts and alarms. More importantly, we need localized melanopic lux control. Night shift workers dealing with post-viral headaches need task lighting at the charting desk that allows them to read medical dosages perfectly, without the entire ward being flooded with 5,000 Kelvin blue light that aggressively suppresses their melatonin and triggers migraine responses. Number 8, the commercial kitchen line, or the hyperkinetic trench. When you return to work post-illness, your body's ability to thermoregulate is deeply compromised. A standard room temperature might cause you to break out in a cold sweat. Now imagine stepping onto the prep line of a bustling restaurant kitchen. The spatial compression is intense, the heat from the ranges is suffocating, and the physical choreography requires hypervigilance. The Froh fix, dedicated microclimate cooling zones. We cannot air condition an entire commercial kitchen to a comfortable degree without freezing the food in the pass, but we can utilize directional displacement ventilation. This means installing low velocity, highly targeted cool air supplies directly above the primary prep stations, washing the chef in a localized column of cool air. Allowing an exhausted body to manually control its temperature stops the system from burning precious metabolic energy on sweating, redirecting the caloric power back to cellular repair. Number 9, the manufacturing assembly floor, or the acoustic assault. Industrial workspaces deal with the hazard that wreaks havoc on a recovering nervous system, constant low frequency vibration. When you are sick, your sensory gating, the brain's ability to filter out useless background information, is severely weakened. The rhythmic pounding of machinery isn't just loud, it is a physical force that travels up through the concrete slab into your bones, keeping the amygdala in a perpetual state of threat alert. The Froh fix is structural isolation and sensory step-down spaces. Workstations on the line need vibration isolating platforms. But equally critical is the creation of a physical refuge alcove directly adjacent to the floor. When an employee is overwhelmed, they should not have to walk 5 minutes across a massive factory to find a quiet space. We need small, heavily insulated acoustic booths right near the line, places where a worker can step in for 60 seconds, experience a massive, immediate drop in decibel levels, close their eyes, and let their heart rate decelerate. And finally, number 10, the teacher's lounge, or the depleted sanctuary. Teachers carry an astronomical viral load. Schools are basically giant, echoing petri dishes. They also carry a massive burden of emotional labor. When a teacher is recovering from an illness, their breaks are the only moments they have to drop the performative empathy required to manage 30 children. Yet, the staff lounge is almost always the room where the roaring, heat producing copy machines live, and stinking of hot toner right next to the buzzing refrigerator. The Froh fix, separation of utility and sanctuary. The machinery of education, like the laminators and the copiers and the paper cutters, must be architecturally decoupled from the space of rest. The lounge needs to be a strict zone of what psychologists call soft fascination. Environments that engage the mind gently without requiring directed, exhausting focus. This means orienting seating away from the door and toward a window with a view of a tree canopy, allowing the teacher's exhausted ocular muscles to focus on infinity rather than a whiteboard. We are biological organisms trying to live and work in rigid modern boxes. The body keeps the score, and it does not care about your quarterly deadlines. It does not care about your performance reviews. It does not care about the inventory in the stockroom. And it certainly does not care about the aesthetic purity of your living room. When you are sick, or when you are simply recovering from the profound, bone-deep exhaustion of just existing in a difficult world, your environment really matters. We have to stop treating mess, fatigue, and burnout as moral failings. They are design failures. We have to demand spaces, both in our homes and in the places we sell our labor, that treat our physical forms with kindness, compassion, and deep respect. Next week on Froh Tell, we are going to talk about environmental control. We will look at exactly why having agency over your thermostat, your lighting, and your airflow isn't just a matter of preference. It is a biological necessity. We'll explore how lacking control over your physical environment actively triggers your sympathetic nervous system. You can find the audio version on Spotify. Follow the project on Instagram and TikTok at Froh Collective, and connect with me on LinkedIn or visit the website frohcollective.com. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing the work. I'm Erns. This is Froh Tell. Stay safe, stay Froh.